You are listening to Murder Fluent, a ZTOTV podcast.
Hi, this is Martha England, and you're listening to Murder Fluent. This is my husband, Aaron.
Or Frank. That's what everybody calls me, so you can call me that too.
I like true crime.
I don't.
You're going to, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to learn about it, at least. We'll see how... I was thinking, like a lot of those true crime things, they put, like, this music underneath it. Should I put some of that music underneath it? Like
creepy, suspicious music? I don't know. Like whatever floats your boat, I guess.
We'll see. Sounds like a lot of work.
Are you ready for this week's story?
Sure.
Story time?
I know I haven't heard anything about this before.
Right.
So.
And I hadn't really heard much of it. I had heard very little before I did the research for this. But today's case is someone who was convicted of a count of capital murder and sentenced to death by lethal injection despite having no motive, confession, or witnesses.
So what's the difference between capital murder and just your regular run-of-the-mill murder?
I mean, do you want
Oh, I thought you knew. If you have to look it up, no reason to do that. I was just saying, if you're going to define it in a certain way, Capital One. We can get one of those credit cards. Capital murders
is a statutory offense of aggravated murder
in Great Britain
or and Northern Ireland and the Republic. Okay.
It was later adopted
in the U.S.
Yeah.
Usually means murder involving one or more of the following factors. The victim is a police officer, firefighter, paramedic, or similar public safety professional and was killed while on duty. But they said that they charged Darlie Routier, who we're talking about, they charged her with capital murder because they tried her for the murder of her 5-year-old son, Damon. They said that she also murdered her 6-year-old son, Devin, but by charging her with the murder for Damon, who was 5 and under the age of 6, that would count as capital murder, and they thought that would pretty much, take care of it. So anyway, like I said, we're talking about Darlie Routier. She was born January 4th, 1970, and married to Darren Routier. They are now divorced. They had 3 children, Devin, Damon, and Drake. And like I said, she was convicted on 1 count of capital murder for Damon only. So June 6, 1996, 2:30 in the morning, she calls 911 and tells the dispatcher that her house has been broken into and that her 2 sons have been stabbed by this intruder.
911, what is your emergency? Ma'am? What? Who did? Hang on. Hang on, ma'am. Medical emergency, 681 Eagle Drive. Ma'am, I'm trying to get an ambulance to you. Hang on a minute. What's going on, ma'am? Medical emergency, 580 Talk to Linda Vista and Willowbrook. Attention 901, medical emergency. Maybe actual stabbing, 5801 Eagle Drive, by 238. Talk to Linda Vista and Willowbrook. Come out 232. Stand by, car flash. Hey. Oh my God. EMS 44601 Eagle Drive, 5801 Eagle Drive. The circle people on the phone. Hold on. A child has been stabbed. Ma'am, I need you to calm down and talk to me. What? 1501 Eagle. Ma'am, listen to me. I need you to... Oh my God. She's Oh my God. Oh my God. Ma'am, who's there with you? Ma'am. What? Is there anybody in the house besides you and your children? My husband, he's just downstairs. He's helping me, but he's dying. Oh my God. Okay. How many little boys? Is it 2 boys? Okay, listen to me. Calm down. Calm down. Go ahead. 5801 Eagle Drive. 5801 Eagle Drive. It's going to be a stabbing. When are they going to be here? Ma'am, they're on their way. Oh my God.
Like I said, Devin was 6 and Damon was 5 years old. She also says that her throat has been slit. So when police arrive later, they go in, and at some point after the initial craziness of the crime scene, they notice that there's a window that had been cut, or a screen that had been cut in the garage, and that they're assuming this is how this intruder entered. But they're pretty much suspicious right from the get-go. They never did find anyone in the house. They didn't have any evidence of anyone being in the house. Nothing was taken. She had lots of rings out on the counter that were never stolen. And according to this police officer, at some point, she had asked about that, about if her rings were stolen. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. That's what he says, but there's also a lot of disagreement about how honest that police officer was.
Well, what's her throat look like when they get there? Is it
I'm
slit?
gonna, yeah. I'm gonna get into that though. Okay, so she says that she and her 2 boys, 2 oldest boys, because she has a 7-month-old baby, but he was not harmed in this. She and the 2 older boys were gonna sleep downstairs in their living room, watching a movie, having popcorn. And the baby and the dad were asleep upstairs. So she said they were sleeping downstairs, and then she's woken up by Damon, and that would be the 5-year-old. And she wakes, some part says she's woken up by him, and then another thing you read will say she wakes up to an intruder. Regardless, she wakes up, whether it was Damon or not, there's an intruder that she sees in the house. She says he's got a baseball cap, a t-shirt, and jeans on, and that he's leaving, and drops the knife that he has in his hands, and she picks it up to kind of like follow him out and chase him out, supposedly. And then you hear her later on this 911 phone call say, well, I shouldn't have picked that knife up, or we could have had fingerprints, which they found suspicious, but
there would have still been fingerprints from the other person on there, though.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, it just depends. But regardless, I would think that too. Even if I had done it, I might say that myself. To me, that's not any sort of admission of guilt. But some people see it that way. Anyway, so she supposedly chases the guy away, and he leaves through the garage. And this is when she says she realizes that the boys have been wounded and that she has had her throat slit. Okay.
She just then realized
that? Okay, so I understand how that's, like, very suspicious. And obviously police are very suspicious right from the get-go of this. Like, how do you sleep through having your own throat slit and having your 2 children stabbed? And I mean, they said that the one was stabbed so hard that it went through his chest completely to the carpet below.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, she also has like a cut on her right arm here that goes to the bone, and she has another cut over here somewhere. And later you see pictures, and there's bruising all along underneath her arms and the backs of her hands, and like it looks like she fought. It looks like she was attacked. Some people say, well, she was attacked, or other people were going to say, well, it was the 6-year-old fighting back. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, the 6-year-old was only like 46 pounds at the time.
It's a 6-year-old.
And he was asleep. He was attacked while he was asleep. And if you know, you would think that if she's going to murder her two sons, she's going to start with the oldest. And go to the youngest. I don't know why then the baby was left behind. I don't know. But we'll get to the reasons why they think that she did it later. But anyway. So she starts screaming at this point. And this wakes up her husband upstairs, who's sleeping with the baby. And he comes down.
Well, that's probably why the baby was up there with the husband.
Right. But if you're gonna you know, why stop with just those two is what my question is. I don't know. Anyway, so she calls him down. He comes down. He sees what's going on. I'm sure at this point she has to briefly explain to him what's going on here, you know, like what she thinks happened. And so she's calling 911. He's going over to the kids and looking at the kids, and he's trying to perform CPR. And he says as he's performing CPR, he blows air into the oldest boy, and the air just comes out of his chest.
Ugh.
Yeah. And so they pretty much know then, I mean, that Devin, the oldest one, is dead. Now Damon is still alive. And he's breathing as well as he can, and he's moving, and his eyes are open when the police arrive. Okay, so back to the intruder. He's leaving through the garage, right? They look through the garage after all the initial craziness is over with, and there's no drops of blood in the garage anywhere. So none from him, the murderer of two boys, and then of course he slit her throat. There had to have been blood. So where is this blood? There's no fingerprints, there's no footprints, there's nothing. The screen that's cut, there's like layers of dust that are untouched. They said that the mulch outside is like not moved, but then you see pictures later and it looks like there's sidewalk and cement right up against the where the window is, you know. So I don't know what they're talking about there. Next to it there are some flower beds, I guess, but that doesn't, to me, that wasn't really anything profound. It was very easy to still get in, I think, that way, even without the dust and stuff being disturbed and there being no blood getting in that way. I think the hard part is finding out how this person left through the garage without leaving any evidence of that. So the knife that was used by this assailant supposedly was their own kitchen knife. I think that's a little bit weird. Why do you come to
you don't come
a house,
prepared,
right? And maybe they weren't. Maybe it was a robbery, and then they weren't expecting 3 people to be asleep. But why, if they're asleep, do you murder them if that's what you're doing? And why not take anything? That doesn't add up either for me. So that's where I really have a hard time with it being a robbery.
It seemed like this woman was setting it all up and was just like, a crime man came in. He was a criminal.
Right. And I kind of thought that at the beginning too, but there's too much weird stuff that I'm not sure that that's exactly what happened. Like there was a fingerprint that was found, didn't belong to anybody that was there. They don't know who. And then there was also another fingerprint that was found, and they kind of just dismissed it. But it had 8 identifiable points on that fingerprint. So I don't know. I don't know enough about fingerprint like analysis and technology to know if that's CSI. Really. I don't know how accurate that would be. There was also a bloody sock that was found, and it was 75 feet down an alleyway from their house. And it was tested, and the results had both Damon and Devin's blood on it. And police dogs couldn't follow the intruder's trail any further than that sock went. So that's a little... But why one sock? Where did that sock come from? And when you look at the sock, it's very little blood, but it had blood from both boys on it. So it obviously had to be there after the stabbings. It wasn't from before. And why? Why just one sock? And how did they not notice? Or were they taking that with them? And that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. So both boys obviously ended up dying from their injuries. Darlie survived, but the slice to her throat nicked her carotid artery. If it had gone more another 2 millimeters, it would have severed her carotid or cut her carotid artery, and she'd have bled to death in minutes. So I also find that a little bit crazy, because how do you know when to stop? I mean, think about how much pressure it would take to get that much further in. Not much, you know? I mean, or maybe she just got lucky. I don't know.
So do you think that she did it?
I have no idea. I still don't know.
I can almost picture a woman like taking a sock out and being like, there it goes, and then walking back in her own footprints, you know.
But that's the thing. There was no blood on the way there either. There's no blood found on the way to the sock or from. And I'll tell you some more here in a little bit that kind of makes you question that as well. So she was treated at the hospital and released 2 days later. They did notice that she didn't have any panties on when she was brought in, and they asked if she had been raped, if she thought she had been raped. And she mentioned that she had felt pressure down there when she woke up, but they did a rape kit and it was negative. Whatever that means.
The thing that is bothering me is that that's 2 things you would think that you would fucking remember, you would be aware of. I mean, have your throat slit, that's not a word.
Have your throat slit, yeah.
Have your throat slit, you would definitely be like, what the fuck? And
well,
then,
okay, and I understand that.
You would
I
definitely
understand
know.
that. Well, but here's the thing. There's things like traumatic amnesia, where you have a traumatic experience, and that is kind of a coping mechanism that your body does. It just kind of makes you shut that out. And, you know, that very well could be. Because I don't know how you sleep through your kids being... There's no way you get your throat slit to within 2 millimeters of your carotid artery and you don't know that that's happening. There's no way your 5-year-old is laying on the floor next to you while you're all laying on the couch and you don't know that he's being stabbed to death. The 6-year-old was a little bit further away, but again, still in the same room. I don't know how that happens and you not know. I think she was awake and she's either lying or she has this traumatic amnesia going on. I don't know. So they're not even really considering the husband for whatever reason. They've pretty much, they do their investigation there and they pretty quickly decide that he's not a suspect. To me, none of this makes sense unless they both did it. Unless,
maybe there was another person involved.
There had to have been at least one other person involved.
Maybe she was having an affair with someone.
But that never came to light in all of this. No one came forward. She never leaked that. He never had any suspicions. The police never had any suspicions of that. So they go to trial. So their suggested motive from prosecution is that Darlie killed the boys because of their financial difficulties. They called her pampered and materialistic. They got character witnesses in to make her look trashy, talking about how she had breast implants and that she was going out the night before Mother's Day and that she didn't take her children to church very often.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but what does that have to do with someone being a good parent or a parent? How does that help you decide whether that parent wanted to kill them or not?
That sounds like a community just not liking that person,
right?
Essentially, which could happen here in this town very easily. I could see that happening. Shit. You remember that time that the police they kept coming in and bothering me about that car that had. They thought that I had hit a council on aging van, and if they would have matched that paint up right, I would have been charged.
Right, which essentially you would think that the paint would match, but
yeah, they were definitely curious. Let's say that.
That's a good word for it. But they had no money in the bank anymore. They had substantial debt. They had decreasing credit ratings, and And then a crime scene consultant had stated that it looked like it had been staged. And so they're saying that she did it because they were in financial ruin and that the boys each had a life insurance policy. But for they were for $5,000 each, $10,000 combined for their life insurance policies. That didn't cover their funeral costs.
Right.
So I don't see the point in that. And then the husband had one for $800,000. So if you're going to knock somebody off, why wouldn't it be him?
Right.
I don't know.
It definitely
That
does
doesn't
seem
make
somewhat
sense to me.
staged. There's something staged here.
Right.
I don't know who did it.
Right. Or that that's not her reasoning, or she didn't do it.
Yeah, I don't know who did it. Maybe they were both involved, but somebody definitely set this up.
Well, and then why not the baby too? Because assuming that the baby's probably got a life insurance policy as well, right? If they have it for the other two, why wouldn't they have it for the third child?
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't make sense anyway for them to do that because
Essentially,
it doesn't cover the cost of the funerals.
Someone has set it up to look like someone outside of or tried to set it up to look like someone else did it that doesn't live in that house. So it has to be somebody, one of the two parents, or both of them, that did this, I think.
I don't know.
Based on my limited information.
Well, it gets crazier. They also said that maybe it was postpartum depression.
Okay. That could be.
Which, to me, that's not postpartum depression. Postpartum... What's the word? Postpartum... I can't think of the word that they call that. Psychosis or something. I don't know. I've had postpartum depression. It's definitely no walk in the park. I never wanted to hurt my children. That being said, I'm not everyone, so...
Yeah, I mean, and there's been multiple cases of people having
Right,
that.
but that's more of a psychosis. That's like a next... I mean,
like that.
I feel like there definitely would have been warning signs ahead of time. But that being said, she did have a few days prior to this attack, she had written in her diary a suicide note to the boys. Obviously, she didn't go through with that.
Yeah. But you see, what is that? Remember when we rented that one movie, Baby Blues or something like that? Do you remember that? We picked it out back when you could rent videos. We rented a DVD of this movie, Baby Blues. We put it in, and it was the story of that woman that drowned all of her kids. And the first scene in the movie is just her drowning them all, and then laying them all down on the bed right next to each other. And we turned it off.
Yep, that was enough for me.
But you watched these things about.
I didn't watch this though. I listened to it.
Oh, okay. So it's different.
For whatever reason, that's different.
Oh, okay.
Well, and because I'm like trying to figure out if she's really the one that did it. Because to me, it's hard to imagine a mother wanting to do that, because I can't imagine ever wanting to kill my children.
Right.
I have 3 children. I would never do that. I mean, not in a million years. Okay, so this officer, David Waddell, comes. He's the first person to arrive at the scene. He says he sees Darren, the husband, walking out of the house. He approaches him, says, "Who are you? What are you doing?" He tells him who he is. He says, "What are you doing?" And he says he's going across the street to get this neighbor that's a nurse. He goes in and he sees what's going on. She's still on the phone with 911. And, there's the 2 boys on the floor. He says that she refused to help her sons when he asks her to a couple of times. Darren says that's not true. You never hear that, because she's still on the phone with 911, like I said. You never hear him ask for her to do that. You never hear her say no. You never hear her, try to make an excuse or do something weird or act strange. She sounds like a frantic mother. I don't know. He didn't even state that whole first part, though, about Darren coming out of the house in his first report. That wasn't until his second report that he even said that.
The officer?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can hear her, like I said, on the phone call asking for an ambulance several times and asking when they're going to get here and saying they're dying. If they don't get here, they're going to die. Mm-hmm. Which we know now that Devin was already dead. He was not living before the ambulance got there, but that Damon was. So the defense attorney says there's no motive because he finds the insurance policy as a motive. He just says there's no way. That doesn't make any sense. And I have to agree with that. There's no confession. She still says to this day that she didn't do it. There are no witnesses. And they're saying it's unrealistic that she staged this scene. They didn't want her to testify at trial either. But she decides that she's going to anyway. And they said she withered under the cross-examination by prosecutor Toby Shook. End quotation. Supposedly during the interrogation, she said that if she did it, she didn't remember it. But then she later said that she denied ever saying it.
Well, so I guess it does seem more like the husband did it.
Or they did it together. So to me, it's either she didn't do it and there was an intruder that wasn't an intruder, if you know what I mean. Like, someone either hired it done or the dad wanted it done. I don't know. But he stayed married to her for a long time. He did eventually divorce her, but it was years later.
So she did.
And he still says that
did she go to jail?
He still said that. Yeah.
For how long?
She was sentenced to death by lethal injection.
Oh, wow, okay. I missed that whole part at the beginning, I guess.
Yeah. So the medical examiner, Vincent DeMaio, says that the wound on her neck nearly killed her. We already said that. And that it wasn't consistent with self-inflicted wounds like he'd seen before. And like I said, she was right-handed, and one of those wounds was like here, so she would have had to go like this way, which you would think would be kind of like at this angle. And it just doesn't kind of really make sense that way. And it went clear to the bone. And why there? Why? I don't know. If you're going to slice your neck, why even bother with that too? I don't know. So they also had a blood spatter expert at this trial, Tom Bevel. He testified that there was cast-off blood found on the back of her nightshirt that indicated her raising the knife and bringing it down, and that the blood would have flown off and hit in this pattern on her back. Okay. So other people will say that it's her blood and their blood mixed, so that she had to have already cut herself for that to have happened. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know how true that is, but that's, the other version of the story.
Yeah, I don't know.
But there were drops in the kitchen, and they were round drops that had been dropped from someone standing still. If they had been by someone moving back and forth, like they said that she was when she was on the phone, it would have had a more oblong, pattern to the blood drops, I guess. She had no cuts on her feet, even though there was broken glass, and the glass was on top of the blood, they said, and there was no blood on top of the glass. To me, that's neither here nor there. What if the glass, was a broken wine glass? What if it fell to the floor in the madness after? To me, that doesn't make any significant difference. So there was no blood evidence of the knife being dropped in the kitchen, that it would have left a certain pattern. There was no indication of that. There was bloody footprints in front of the sink, and luminol showed where some blood had been cleaned up before the police arrived. There was lots of blood by the sink in general. Prosecution said that this is where she cut herself. The husband said that she stood there while she was on the phone with 911 though, and she was grabbing towels and stuff to stop bleeding. So to me, that doesn't mean anything either. The bloody knife print in the living room, there was one that showed the knife had been laid down in the living room on the floor, and that it was by someone that had been actively bleeding. So that had to have been her or the children.
Yeah.
So essentially it had to be her. But she did say that she had the knife after he had dropped it and chased it. Maybe she did bring it back in and put it down after, and picked it up and put it on the counter then. I don't know.
I don't know what. It would be
To
a
me,
shame
that's
if she
so
didn't do it, and if she didn't do it and they killed her. It would be a real...
Right, but all of this to me is circumstantial. So none of it's definitive. And that's where my problem is. So, let's see where I'm at now. Darlie had said she had picked it up and put the knife on the counter then, and then there was fiber on a separate bread knife that was similar to fiber that was from the screen. They say it's similar, though. They don't say it's an exact match to this fiber in the screen. And if the bread knife has the fiber from the screen, how does that happen? Obviously they didn't have that ahead of time and then cut the knife and then put it back in there.
Right. Well, if they're saying that somebody broke into this house through a screen and then get a knife in the house
to do that with, I don't think that...
Yeah, the person would have had to have had a weapon beforehand to get in there to cut that screen. Right. So the whole thing falls apart.
But again, it's not... Right, but it's not an exact match. And that's where my problem is. If it had been definitive evidence there that was exactly the same fiber from the screen, it definitely came from the screen, that to me is very fishy. But with it not being a complete match, how can you say? And this is someone's life that you're judging. So the defense was really leaning on that bloody sock outside as their reason for her not doing the crime. Like, that proved that she didn't do the crime. They said that since Damon was still alive when the paramedics arrived, he could have only survived like 8 or 9 minutes with those injuries before he would have bled to death. Darlie was on the phone with 911 for almost 6 minutes. So that only leaves her, it was like 5 minutes and 44 seconds. So that's like, what? At the most, 3 minutes and 14 seconds, okay? So she has 3 minutes and 14 seconds, they're saying, to cut herself, stage the crime, run that sock down that alleyway and come back, scream for Darren, and call 911. This is a crime scene. I mean, that's an estimated time frame. But originally, this medical examiner had said probably in 5 minutes. So if that's the case, even less. But it obviously wasn't 5 minutes because she was on the phone for almost 6. So obviously the time frame has a little leeway.
Maybe they were in it together, and then at the last minute, the husband just swapped the script on her and just was like, yeah, she... whatever.
But then why wouldn't she say, oh, well, but we've been planning it this whole time? Because she's going down for it regardless.
Oh, wow. It's weird.
Yeah.
This is what you would call an unsolved mystery.
Well, they say it's solved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to look at it I guess it kind of teaches you if you want to get, she didn't get away with it, but if you want to make it very hard, just do a lot of crazy shit.
Apparently.
Just stab yourself a bunch. I don't know. I don't know. But
at the same time, you would think that it would leave too much evidence. So again, there was no blood from her either in the garage. So if she took that sock, she would have had to take the sock after stabbing the boys, but before cutting herself. But then they said that knife print was from someone that was actively bleeding like she was. So what happened when? That's the part that confuses me, because there's so much of this evidence where they say, well, she must have been actively bleeding there, like the blood at the sink where she had cleaned it up. Mm-hmm. But why clean up that blood there when there's blood literally everywhere? And you can see that in some of these crime scene photos. There's blood everywhere. There's spots and footprints and smears and drops of blood everywhere. It's on everything. Which you can imagine, if she's running all over and she's going from boy to boy and he is too, it is gonna...
Oh yeah, it's gonna get everywhere.
Be everywhere. So... we already talked about the blood splatter on the back of her shirt, but they said that it was mixed and that it could only have been when she was already attacked or already actively bleeding that those spots showed up. Like I said, to me that doesn't totally make sense, but I'm not a crime scene expert. And then supposedly I read from another source that her blood and Damon's blood were the only ones found on the knife, the murder weapon. That Devin's blood was not at all found on the knife. And that's a little bit weird because he was the one that was dead when they got there and was presumably the first one stabbed.
Right.
And that would make sense that he would already have been dead when they got there because he was stabbed first. He had more time to bleed out. I don't know. I can't verify that that's true either. I didn't have a verifiable source on that. But if it's true, that's where I think maybe it's true. 2 intruders. And that's why one used the knife from the kitchen that murdered them. And then another one had a knife that cut the screen, maybe. And they murdered the older boy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that could be.
That makes sense to me. I don't know. And my question is, did she put shoes on and run down the alley with the sock and then run back and then take them off? That seems like it's going to take up too much time. So she's running barefoot 75 feet down an alley with this and back. And like I said, she's got 3 minutes to do this at most.
Right.
There's no trail of blood. So she would have had to slit her throat on the way back. Or after she was back, I mean. And that police officer was there, said that Damon was looking around. He was gasping for breath. He was kind of crawling a little bit, trying to move around. He was very much alive when he got there. And if that was the case, why? If she's murdering them, is she going to leave him alive like that?
That's weird.
And a chance that he's going to make it? And if she is, why? Why would you do that? And did she not know? And how did she not know? Because, like I said, he said it was very clear that he was alive. That there was no doubt about it. His eyes were open. He was looking around. He was gasping for breath.
So she was put to death. How long was she in jail before they put her to death?
She's in jail now.
Oh, she hasn't been put to death yet.
No.
She's sentenced to be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
So
by lethal injection.
And how long ago was this?
96.
So has she ever changed her story at all? Has it ever been like, yeah, I guess I did that? Like, so a lot of times that happens. No, never.
No, she has maintained her innocence this whole time.
Does she ever get retrials or anything? Is this still an ongoing thing, or they can?
Yeah, it is still ongoing. But I still have questions that I'm asking.
Solve this shit.
Apparently Darren was no help.
Darren was no help?
Wait a minute. No, Darren's the father.
Oh, okay. Well, you got Darren, Devin.
So they're saying he didn't
Damon.
help. They're saying, police are saying, there's no way he helped. There's no way he had anything to do with it. And they kind of like immediately brush him off. Which to me is stupid because it's always...
Yeah.
I don't know.
What's the father's job? What's he do?
Excuse me.
COVID.
Got it.
What's the father do?
He is like some sort of computer technician kind of. He had his own business that wasn't doing well at this point. I don't know exactly what. But it was going down the tubes, I think. So there was also an attempted break-in about a half a mile away that same night, about an hour before the attacks too. So that's a little bit fishy as well. And there were supposedly people that had seen suspicious vehicles and a man walking after this at night. Apparently they didn't feel that was too important though. So she was convicted of murdering Damon on February 4th, 1997 and sentenced to death by lethal injection. there was a scene that, I don't know if I want to say a scene. There was a video clip of Darlie that they showed during the trial, the prosecution did, of her singing Happy Birthday to Devin, who was turning 7 shortly after the death. And like there were balloons at the grave site, and she was spraying silly string and like singing Happy Birthday, and they played that over and over and over again. And they said, you know, that convicted her, that she was too happy and it didn't make sense. She was chewing gum and smiling during this time. And what they don't show, though, and didn't show during this trial, was prior to that, they had this very solemn, like, memorial service that was, you know, a total different tone prior to this. And that this was the, you know, for his birthday. And there was a quote.
I'll tell you what, that would be so terrible if everyone thought you killed your kids. Your kids were dead, and you were stuck in prison because people thought you killed them. That is like the war, and you were going to be lethally injected.
Yep, I know. I can't imagine.
Fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But
Darlie said he wanted to be 7. I did the only thing I knew to do to honor him and give him all his wishes because he wasn't here anymore. But how do you know what you're going to do when you lose 2 children? How do you know how you're going to act? And I said, that's a damn good point.
Happy birthday to you.
They sprayed silly string, which took maybe 20 seconds. They sang Happy Birthday, and you hear Darlie and Darren both saying,
Love you, Devin and Damon.
you know, just like they're still there.
Why the confetti? Why the balloons? Why the happy birthday song?
Well, because even though we're sad because Devin and Damon aren't here, we try to hang on to what we can to get us through these times.
And I recall how shocked I was at the sight of that. And I wasn't the only one who was shocked. Lead prosecutor Greg Davis was shocked as well.
I was really taken aback by her demeanor. I tell you, as a parent, I found it disgusting.
She was smiling and chewing gum, spraying the silly string around, and just as a mother, I thought, that's just not appropriate. I mean, what's going on?
So her defense attorneys appealed her case, but the claims of errors in the trial and investigation were dismissed. So in June 2008, she was granted the right to new DNA tests, and she wants, you know, the fingerprint testing. She wants DNA on everything redone. Darren filed for divorce in 2011. He said it was really difficult and that he thought Darlie was innocent, and he never said anything other than she was innocent. January 29th, 2014, a request was granted from the prosecution and defense for her case for further DNA tests vital to the defense to be performed on a bloody fingerprint found in the house and the bloody sock and her nightshirt. In 2018, court orders a 3rd round of DNA tests, and the fingerprint is still unidentified. Even though they've sent it, I don't know if they have or they haven't sent it through like databases with fingerprints, or if they just haven't had a match.
they just have some guy come in and look at it. Well, that's
Right.
nobody I know. See you later.
Yeah. Then in 2019, the Innocence Project gets involved in her case, and so they're working on her case now. They say she's innocent, and right now it's on hold though because of the old Rona. So Drake, who is the 3rd and youngest child that survived.
I thought you were going to see the hip hop artist.
No, not that. He has nothing to do with this. He was placed in foster care when all of this happened, for his safety. And then his paternal grandparents got custody of him until after Darren, the father, was able to... Don't do that to that poor cat.
That's how the mamas carry him.
Right in the middle of this.
Good.
Anyway, his father finally was able to get himself back on his feet and to take care of himself, and was able to have Drake come live with him. And then in 2013, he was diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia.
Which one was the father or
the son?
Oh wow!
Yeah,
so,
can you
so
believe
how
it?
old would he be?
He's in his 20s.
Oh.
His last treatments, though, were completed in 2016, and he was in remission. But he has not been able to touch his mother or be touched by his mother since he was 7 months old, and that happened because she's on death row. And you can't have any contact.
And that would be extremely weird for him, probably, at this point. As an
well,
adult.
at this point, maybe. I don't know, because he regularly visited her all his life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. To me, this is really hard. And they're, on the evidence that I was able to see and observe, obviously I wasn't on a jury. Obviously, this is my own
I would hate to be on a
interpretation.
jury for this.
Oh, I would too. But there would be no way I would say for sure she needs to go to death. There would be no way I would feel comfortable sentencing someone to death with this evidence.
Well, I mean, I guess that just goes to show you what that community felt about her in general. I mean,
but it was the jurors that said that video that they played over and over again of her at that birthday party.
Yeah.
Was a lot of the reason why they had convicted her. And one of them even said that if they had seen the first part of that video where they were having that memorial service, that it would have totally changed things and she probably wouldn't have voted guilty.
And you probably shouldn't allow a lawyer to manipulate people like that, because
they played it one time in the trial. They requested it later. The jury did. They watched it 8 or 9 times themselves on their own while they were deliberating.
It was provided. The clip was provided by
they were using it as evidence, and that's not evidence.
Right, and he probably was. You know how lawyers do. They was standing. Look at this woman. Look at how happy she is. All this stuff,
right.
And that probably made her break down.
And he said it was sick, and he was sickened by it. Like I said, I don't know how I would act. If our boys were gone, my life would be destroyed. I don't know how I would be. I don't know how you recover from that. I don't know.
No, I don't know why people wouldn't naturally look at that as like a clip that has been manipulated in a way. Because a person that there is not... I mean, maybe I'm being stupid here, but I don't think that a person that would maliciously kill their child would celebrate a birthday party for that child like that. Yeah. I mean...
And you see all these pictures of these boys, and they're smiling, and they're happy, and, the house is... They say that they're overspending all this money, but what they're doing with it is, they're going on vacation with their kids, and they're buying things, and, doing stuff with their kids. There's no indication... there's nothing that anybody picked up on prior to this that would have tipped anybody off. And to me, if you have been a loving mother and a loving father for almost 7 years, financial ruin isn't enough to
you can
totally
deal with
negate
way
that.
Worse than that. I mean, that's the whole thing about your family. It's that's if you have nothing else, you have that. So like all your bills piling up, whatever. At least you still have your family, and you still have those people to depend on and to love you and to be that. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
I know I would hate to be on the jury for this. I would not. Like, I think about like when our kids come to us with a fight and I can't decide who's right or wrong in that. This would be a nightmare that I would have to resign from the jury. I don't know if you're able to do that or not, but you would have to do something.
Well, and I think that's before the trial, though. I mean, they go through their own...
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't want to be on the jury for anything. In previous years, when I thought I was maybe going to have to go do jury duty, I was really unhappy about it. I don't know if you remember when they're like, you might get jury duty. And I'm like, fuck, here we go. Let's do it. Hope it's not a murder. Hope
I've
it's
never
not
had to do it either, and I don't.
Hope it's not one of the... Because around here, it'd always be some weird, crazy shit, like some dude having a standoff with the cops, you know.
It's probably a drug case,
Yeah.
if we're being honest. Around here, which is not really funny. It's sad.
But you have anything else on this?
It was... If you want to know more about it, there are plenty of places you can go. A million different documentaries, and there's lots of books. The one, Hush Little Babies, The True Story of the Mother That Murdered Her Own Children by Donald A. Davis, I believe is the one that originally wrote this book and thought that she was guilty and has since changed their mind, so any of the sales that they get from that goes to her now. Like,
what a
gee, thanks.
bold... Like, who the fuck is that guy?
Right?
He's just a guy that wrote a book about somebody... That's wild.
It was featured on ABC's The Last Defense, Dateline Purgatory, examining the case that sentenced Darlie Routier to death, A Killer in My House, The Darlie Routier Story, Bloodstained Justice, The Darlie Routier Story, and Killer Mom, Darlie Routier. Those are just a few. Bits and pieces are on YouTube too. There was like a Lisa Gibbons talk show from a gazillion years ago.
Terrible.
It was actually interesting because the guy, the husband was on there. Her mother, also named Darlie, was on there, and his parents were on there, and they're like, she didn't do it. And of course there were other people there that were like, yeah, she did. She definitely did it. And that's, someone said that Devin was the reason for all the bruising, but you'll see in the pictures that it was a lot of bruising.
Yeah.
For a 46-pound 6-year-old that was being stabbed to death.
Yeah, well, hopefully things turn out the right way for that.
Yeah, I don't know. Sad.
Yeah, I wanted to mention our last episode we talked about Ed Kemper. While I was scrolling through Tubi, I don't know if you guys enjoyed the Tubi. It's free. A lot of good horror movies on there. Recommend for that. Better than Netflix selection, Amazon Prime. They get the best selection. But they made an Ed Kemper movie. I don't know if it's good or not. I cannot imagine how they navigated some of those scenes that they must have had to deal with, especially with the sexual side of Ed Kemper. But it might be something you want to look into. It kind of intrigued me, but after us diving into it, I didn't want to bring back those memories, so just wanted to keep all you people on point. Yeah, I forget who plays Ed Kemper, but he looks pretty good. The poster looks interesting. I don't know. Check it out. Anyways, do you know what you're going to talk about next time?
We're going to talk about the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case.
Okay. Well, I don't know about that either, so I'll know more about
Living
that.
under a rock.
I avoid it. I avoid these things. They make me sad. You know why? Because they're killing their kids.
Because they're sad. Well,
they're fucking killing. And anytime I hear about somebody killing their kids, I immediately picture what that must be like, and I'm like, that's terrible. Why would you do that to? Stop killing your kids.
Also,
and your wives, and your husbands.
Too.
Sometimes that
anybody.
happens.
Don't kill people. I think we can go with that.
There's one guy I can think of that could take out.
Let's not.
But I'm not going to talk about that. If you want to know more about it, you can DM me.
No.
I'll tell you his name. No. You might even know him. Anyways.
Also,
if
you're struggling with postpartum depression, get some help. Don't let it continue. Don't suffer. Don't do things you'll regret.
Yeah.
Call somebody, talk to somebody.
And if you're a husband and your wife is dealing with that, be a little bit more active, because I didn't know what was going on, and I feel bad about it.
It was all a sucky situation,
Yeah.
Third baby and never experienced that before. Don't recommend.
Yeah.
Do not recommend.
Keep your heads up, and don't kill anybody.
Yeah. See you next time.